So the other thing that I want to bring up though is I'm going to just call it spirituality. That's what I call it when I'm talking with my clients, right? And so is and this is just Jeff's bucket. I'm not asking you to, believe what I believe. I'm just naming this. So I think, like religion falls into like spirituality or faith. There's a lot of people that believe, but they're not a part of an organized religion. Or there's a lot of folks that are part of an organized religion, and it is a foundational element of their own personal well-being, right? So this is one of those things that I wanted to talk about. So I was raised in a religious upbringing, and so I have all those kind of fundamentals that are a part of my core values and all of that kind of thing. But I evolved in my life to where I refer to myself now more just as spiritual. So, do I believe in a higher power, or do I believe that there are forces out there of work bigger than us and what's on this planet? Like this isn't that kind of podcast to debate any of this stuff, but I do believe, right, that there is a bigger power and something bigger than us and something that brings us together collectively and things of that nature. And you see this in people that either have really powerful organized, they have religion in their life, and it's a really big part of their like I said, it's a fundamental. So if and I'm not necessarily encouraging somebody that to go join an organized religion, but I'm just saying spirituality in general, regardless of what you want to name it. And I don't really, again, just for me, I would consider myself spiritual. So I believe and I have faith and things of that nature. And that to me is a super powerful part of emotional well-being. It's just believing. It's, I would use the word hope here, right? And that's, you see this in people that get depressed or things of that nature, is one of the things that they oftentimes lose is hope that things can be better than it is right now, right? So anyway, we can go wherever you want with that.
Yeah, I have I'll share my background and my experience with it. I grew up Catholic, going to church all the time, but not really paying too much attention while I was there. It was more about like what not to do. Be quiet, sit down, listen, sing when they tell you to sing, and repeat the things that they tell you to repeat. And it wasn't until like more like junior high where my family, my mom would introduce us to other religions like Christianity, like Jehovah's Witness, just different religions that we would meet with people and they'd share. People come, they want to share. My mom would invite them in and say, "All right, let's hear it," and we would just listen. And in what that gave me was, first of all, a realization that everybody thinks that their religion is the right religion. And
Right.
instantly I realized we can't all be right? So we're probably all wrong. And I saw the commonalities in several different religions. And then as I grew up and started learning about different spiritual practices, Eastern practices, and just reading some of the text, like I can't even think of a book right now, but just reading different books, I realized that we're all just interpreting things that we feel. And it throughout the centuries and however long these religions and spiritual practices have been in place, we're all kind of coming to a consensus of what we're feeling. And there's a book called Awareness, where the Anthony DeMello, I think is his name, he's talking about the color green. And imagine if two blind people have never seen the color green and they're trying to explain it to somebody, and somebody says, well, yeah, the color green is like, minty, or the color green is fresh, like these words that describe it. And then somebody else says, yeah, the color green is whatever they feel. And then they get together and they say, oh, this is green because it's minty. And the other person says, no, it's actually green because it's, I'm doing a horrible job. You should read the book. But my point being that we're all just trying to describe something that we can't fully grasp.
Sure.
And I think when we do that, and when we look inside and have something that we can kind of hold on to that helps us, it helps us identify what we're feeling. So a lot of the religions and spiritual practices help put labels on feelings that you've got, that help create a system to in my opinion, get you unstuck out of wherever you're at. And one of the great things is this book, and I'm kind of cut to it right now, The Tools, by Phil Stutz. And I don't know if you've seen the documentary. This made me realize that you can actually take the spirituality out of it and then just use the tools themselves in a way that helps you overcome the problem that you're running into in the moment. So that's my thought on it. And I think it is important.
Absolutely. The other point that I wanted to make here that might be really helpful for our community here is, and I think about, the positive psychology movement, right, was probably at a fever pitch, maybe 10-ish years ago, right? It really started coming on like in the late 90s and early 2000s. And then by, 2010-ish, it was, in my mind, and I've been a student of this stuff for a long, long time. And there were, books coming out like The Happiness Advantage and Grit and all these other, ones that we've talked about on our podcast and ones that we talk about in our Team 212 work. And it was really kind of fun to see all of these ideas that were being backed up and validated by science, right? Where they did these large wholesale studies of people on, aging and just the type of people that are able to go through the Citadel and be graduates and all these things. And most of it breaks down to like your own psychology, like what you believe about yourself, what you believe about the world, what you believe is possible. And so for me, like I've generally considered myself a pretty emotionally healthy person the most of my life. And again, maybe that was, my very early, kind of core value upbringing from my folks, and then right into the military and these kind of iconic crucible, situations that I got put into at 18, 19 years old that, were life shaping for me. And it put things into perspective. And that can go, one of two ways for a lot of folks. Fortunately, mine was more of a character building opportunity, and it was an emotional strengthening opportunity for me. But that's what I really wanted to just make the point of right here is there is so much material that's out there that's available to study that can really help you improve. I'll just use one quick example, like from the Happiness Advantage, right? It talked about families that have dinner together, literally where you sit around the table as a family, and the rule is, like we don't have our cell phones, and we're actually communing and having a meal together. And then the conversation is not like, what are the Kardashians doing? The conversation is like, hey, Billy, what did you struggle with today? Or what did you find, what were you able to overcome? Because we want to talk about struggle because that's a part of life. And then by the end of the meal, it's like, hey, and share 2 things that you're grateful for today or that happened in your day today that you're happy about, right? And they did studies on this, and it was like overwhelmingly for the whole family unit and the individual members of that family, such a big plus to their well-being.
Sometimes I wonder if those are if one leads the other, the chicken, or like what came first, the chicken or the egg? Because, and I've been in both of these situations, right? I've been in situations where I don't even want to be at the dinner table. I want to, eat dinner in my room because I'm just so upset at life or whatever. And I've also been in the situation where I'm really happy and we're all at the dinner table. We're playing, we like to play board games, me and the family. So we're playing some board game and we're just having the best time. And it's like, why can't we do this every time? And I realize sometimes that, and this kind of digs into a different topic. So I want to make sure we stay on the mental health. But if you are coming up to a decision of how you're going to behave, and I think, in Team 212, we talked about the thermostat versus the thermometer, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're not feeling it, right? If I'm just like, I'm not feeling positive, I don't want to talk about my struggles. I feel like just going into my room and eating my food and watching TV. If even if you're feeling that way and you continue and you move on and you say, this is a practice that we do every day, so we're going to do this, that in it of itself helps you overcome those challenges out in the real world. And I mean, not that the dinner table isn't the real world, that's probably the most real world, but in that situation, you have a lot of control, right? But out of that situation, you have even less control. And in this situation, where you're with your family and you're trying to make a decision whether you're going to sit at the dinner table and talk about how you overcame struggles for the day, or if you're just going to complain, then that's where you have to have that grit. I mean, you talked about grit, or you talked about, like, in my opinion, it's intention. If you have that intention, it actually becomes a lot easier to say, okay, my intention, regardless of how I feel, is to have a good time with my family where we're building our emotional health. So,
right. So that everything you just said there to me is discipline equals freedom.
Discipline equals freedom. That goes back to that. And yeah, discipline for me as a kid was such a bad word. Like, it was a word that I hated, discipline. It was like it was prison, the word discipline. Right. But if you realize that discipline equals freedom, it changes your whole perspective. So
yep.
Yeah, that's great.
Love it.